Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, y'all know who it is. It's the merchandise, Eddie Stanley, and this is Caution Real Radio. I know I'm supposed to be having a show every week. Every week I'm supposed to have a show. Well, this topic I really had to do research on. I had to truly dig, and I know the last one I talked about how I was just gonna dive into race issues and stuff like that. Well, it had to take me 2 weeks to truly think about what I want to do. I know this is Caution Real Radio, but I also have to put in consideration of those that might offend. Yes, race really is a touchy subject where people who know me will look at me and go, hey, well, I didn't know you was a racist like that and this, that, and the third, when quite frankly, I'm not. So I had to do a lot of talking. I had to do a lot of facts, so to speak. This isn't one of them shows like the last three of little to show prep of me just ranting. This one I really had to pay attention to. And it also takes people man enough to say when they're going to do something and when they're not to, and apologize for it, because yes, this is going to be the race episode, but how I'm going to approach this is going to be totally different, because I was going to start the show off with every race saying that, like the N word for black people, the W word for our Latino community. Same thing with the Polish, the Asians, and everything. But then that's when I end up talking to the person that's one of my guiding lights. I end up talking to her, and something that she did, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm the biggest religious person in the world, but it is certain things where certain sayings I do follow, where it is one of those cases of the sins of the parents normally falls on the children. And I had to think about my children before approaching this and really determine, because if I would have just went gun holes blazing, ha ha ha, this is fun, it would have been fun, it would have been entertaining, it would have been controversial, but how would that have affect my kids when they grow up in a diverse city? But I am going to talk about certain things with race. I'm going to talk about African American, if that's what you believe that you are. I myself, because I was born here in America, I consider myself a black American. Now, granted, I shouldn't put race on that, but that's what I consider myself. Now, even with that being said, the reason why I thought about that, because once I was told that, I did research of, in my opinion, two of the greatest men that are many, but two of the greatest men were Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. I had to do research to see how it affected their children on the stuff that they did. And when I read a couple stuff of what they had to go through fighting for equal, for their fathers, fighting for diversity and all that stuff, I looked and went, them are great men, because they died for what they believed in. I myself, I can sit here and say that, but I'm a selfish person. So no, I'm not gonna sit here and say, well, I'll die for what I believe in. And that's what it boils down to, because a former coworker of mine, when I was joking with him, and he told me and said, my way of thinking, I'm one of the people that can actually get, I'll say, African Americans on the same page. But like I told him, I'm not as great as Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. because I'm not willing to die for what I believe in. Sorry for the dramatic pause, and also apologize for the So here's how it basically boils down. I'm going to touch on certain issues. You can take it as you want. You can take it how it goes. You can look at me totally different saying, oh, you caked out. Well, guess what? Call me Betty Crocker. Or, you know what? Eddie Crocker. Yeah, I did cake out. Yeah, I really put thought into it, and that's why I took 2 weeks before I even came out with this show. The title of the show will be called I'm a Street Racer, but hey, let's dive into some of the stuff that plagues on why race really is a thin line and why it's a touchy subject. Because I know here in Michigan, the latest situation here was the Caucasian man that hit the little boy in a urban city, and they end up beating the crap out of him. In my opinion, that was crap, because another story that didn't hit worldwide was, I believe, probably a week, 2 weeks later, an African American male ended up hitting a little Caucasian boy, but the mob didn't say you N-word this and when attacked him and needed somebody to save him. I believe the reason why, well, I ain't gonna say the reason why, I believe certain things is so asinine because black people, we want to be respected, we want to look as equals, but when we act like savages, that's what make our Caucasian counterparts look at us weird. If we act like we don't belong in this country, then how are they going to actually look at us as equals? I mean, I can even go back. We get portrayed so terribly in society of going, oh, you know, he a black dude, this. I don't see why we need to be taken serious. We act like we don't belong, like we act like we can't do anything that's right because we got to portray ourselves as hard or gangster or thugs. And the fact of the matter is, soon as you get caught to go to prison, about 80-85% of us start whining like babies going mama mama. But when mama was trying to tell us what to do and what not to do, guess what? You didn't want to listen. You want to be OG. I mean, yeah, it is cool to actually quote unquote live that life, but there is a time to grow up and actually start acting like an adult instead of a kid that wants to do things just to prove themselves. I'm not knocking, like, I would never knock my race because I am proud to be who I am. I am proud of the color of my skin. But for us to truly act civilized, we really need to pay attention to what we do. It is a thin line with us here because honestly, it is one of those things of a cartoon. I won't say the name of it because let's face it, I'm not. But they had an episode on the cartoon that's on Adult Swim where they had it where if Martin Luther King didn't get assassinated, if he just got put in a coma, what would he truly say? That episode to me was very positive, because how would he react to how everything that he fought for, all the anus kickings he ended up getting for us to actually be equal, would affect him now, where he'll look and go, wow, what happened? This is what it boiled down to. And honestly, that's why I look at us of going, how can we thrive? That's what my show is basically about, is how can people thrive when stuff get brought to light? I myself, I'm not gonna sit here and say I'm the person that's gonna make a difference. Like I said, I'm selfish. I'm not going to just go out there all like that. People who know me know my opinions. They know how I think and how I act. But in the same sense, it is truly one of them. We need to get our spit together. And I did say spit together, so that way we can actually truly be an asset, instead of some of us are liabilities. Now, next up, I can talk about how, what else? Well, we're Caucasians. Yes, I can sit here and say I have so many Caucasian friends and blah blah blah. Well, some of them I do, some of them I don't. Some of them look at me as a threat, even when I'm staying in their same neighborhood. They look at me as a threat, like, ooh, look, it's one of them. Chill, okay? All of us is not bad. They are, but that's like with any race. There's your good, there's your bad. I mean, I can think of some Caucasian people that were a-holes, that was racist, that was just downright just, okay, you're this, I know you're this, and you're beneath me. Well, you're entitled to your opinion, and I'm entitled to my opinion by saying you're a jerk. Plain and simple. I would say an a-hole, but that's being disrespectful to a-holes. Um, oh, excuse me. So with that, I would say give us a break. We did get a break. Look at how we acted. So I understand on the concern and being scared and going, oh my gosh, they're gonna rob me. Some people are still stuck on the 97, or the 67 riots, or 68. Huh. But they still stuck on that, where it's truly one of them, they look at that of going, okay, well, this is how they act. Look at all the little riots. The Rodney King thing. Riot, man who ended up getting beat up just for quote unquote validation, end up being Reginald Denny. That was sad. That was kind of embarrassment of going, wow, really? Also, a topic that I shouldn't, but that's like the situation down in Florida. The man was found innocent, granted. Do I have my opinions on that? Yes, I do. Am I going to express them? You dang Skippy, I'm going to express them. But the only difference is I can see both sides of the equation. You know what? I'm not even going to sit here and lie. I really can't. I can justify it by saying, okay, well, it wasn't clear cut as everybody thought it was, but what is necessarily clear cut? There's a lot of guys that's in prison that pretty much didn't do something, or either on the run, where they truly are innocent, but guess what? All the evidence point to them. And let's face it, once people feel like it's you, is you. No in between, is you. Until they find otherwise. Everybody is still bitter about the O.J. Simpson trial. You have every right to be. I myself, I do not. Am I bitter about the situation in Florida? Yes, I am. Because I thought the key evidence was the dispatcher saying, do not leave the car. And then the racist remark came out by saying, y'all just gonna let them get away. But you can't really look at it that way, quote unquote, because you can't make stuff out of a racial issue. I myself looked at it going, you're right. Because just because of what happened is not really a race issue. Is, yeah, you know what? No, it was. It was. But regardless, that's like the NBA owner that ended up saying what he said about black people. I listened to it. Did he have a right to say it? Yes. Dealing with the consequences? Yes. That's all what it's about, is dealing with consequences. If you're man enough to say something, then you deal with the consequences. My whole situation with that is he had the right to say it. How did he say it? Everybody's looking at it as, oh, well, this is how he felt. Yes, that's probably is how he felt. He grew up in a generation where we were nothing. And at times they still look at us like we're nothing. But with the tone of his voice, sounded like a jealous lover. That's basically what it boils down to. It sounded like a jealous lover, so he was trying to say stuff to hurt her. It's funny how it ended up backfiring on him, but hey, you kind of had to pay attention to it, where I laughed and was like, well, I hate to say it, even with a Michigan native as big as Irving Johnson, still got looked at as the N-word. No matter what his accolades was, no matter what he did, he still got looked upon as that. And that's the heartbreaking thing when while I'm talking about this episode about race, because everybody's entitled to their opinion. Everybody can say what they want to say, but nobody really wants to deal with the consequences unless they are surrounded by people that think like them. I think that's why we have Aryan brotherhoods, we have gangs, we have the Ku Klux Klan, because my whole thing is with Caucasians, and yes, this might look at, and if this apply to you, it does. If it don't, it don't. The whole ideal about gangs, Caucasians was the biggest gangs ever. Not all, but I'm talking about with the KKK. They didn't like how stuff was changing in this country, so they came out with that gang. To me, that's a gang. They can call it whatever they want to. It's a gang. That's how I look at it. I mean, and it's sad and it's scary because I gotta tiptoe around that, because I have to think about my safety. Actually, my safety, I'm concerned about it, but I'm more concerned about my kids. Like I said, I can sit here and BS and talk and say, oh yeah, I can talk with reckless abandonment, but you really cannot. When you have people that you need to protect until they're 18, and even after they're 18 you still protect them, you really cannot mouth off like somebody that has nothing. So in my opinion, the Donald Sterling thing, yes, he was wrong for saying it. But what made it, like, it was wrong for him to say it, but it was kind of funny that karma came up and bit him after what he did with, like, what he did to minorities when he owned apartment buildings. I mean, you can't really count that. And that was the same thing with the Mavericks owner. He made a statement. They tried to make it a big deal. I didn't see a problem with it because he was just using that as a factor. If y'all want to know what it was, go check out the interview. He, in my opinion, that's not being racist. He's just bringing out the point. The point that he made was, and even with me, I apologize if this offend this, I really do. But when he made the point saying if he saw a black dude in a hoodie walking down the street, he's gonna cross the street. If he saw a Caucasian dude walking down the street with tattoos on his face, he was gonna cross back across the street. They tried to link that to Trayvon Martin so bad when everything shouldn't be linked to everything. I'm sick of this country that's so sensitive on everything that, oh my gosh, let me find the story here, let me do this, ooh, I can do this, where I commend reporters because they can stir up controversy, and guess what? They have the amendments to back them up. Guess what? I have the amendments to back me up too. The only difference is I know that I will have to deal with consequences. Same thing with them. They'll have to deal with consequences too, but in a different way. I'm really tiptoeing around this episode because it's so much I want to get into of how the stereotypes and how this and how that, where as much as I want to bring up controversy, I'm not trying to alienate my, like, I'm not trying to alienate my people, and that goes for Caucasians, Asians, whites, blacks, or I already said Caucasians, that's white, never mind. But like my Latino community, my Arabic community, because even they get a bad rap. Is like with the 9/11 thing, it was a radical group that end up doing it, but they end up, all Arabics end up getting looked at sideways. And that's what this episode is about. It's about everybody that stereotypes. I don't care what you are, everybody in this world is a street racer. Think of the metaphor. Street racer. They are. No matter what you do, you can look at somebody and do it. I'm not even gonna lie. I done did it from time to time where I can give an example where I end up seeing somebody and I end up making a sarcastic joke and realize after I said it, I was man enough to go back and apologize for it. Was it right? No. Should I have said it? No, I shouldn't have. But guess what? You say things to try to hurt different races. And this is what I'm trying to, I guess what I'm trying to get out this episode is the factor of everybody's one. You can't sit here and say, no, I'm not. Because there have been those times where you looked at somebody and judged the book by its cover. People look at me, they see me, they look at me and think that I'm just a street thug from Detroit. But when they actually talk to me, they realize that I have a mind. I actually have opinions. I'm like a chameleon. I can adapt to any conversation. Why? Because my line of thinking is truly not of that basic, I need to do this. I was born, I lived, I'm going to die. That's the basic thing. I'm going to die. When? I don't know, but it's truly a remarkable thing to actually be on this earth at this time, at this moment, because you see different things play out and you look and you want to actually help or act or talk or whatever, but the world is so PC now, or I should say this country is so PC now, that the only way you can actually talk is behind closed doors. I myself, I talk in public because guess what? I have the amendments that's backing me, but the messed up thing about it is, even though you have them amendments, are you really man enough, woman enough to actually deal with the consequences that come from them? Some of us is some of them, like some of us are, others are not. That's why I sit back and listen and watch, and I get along with every race. Why? Because we can learn so much from each other if we just gave each other a chance. Not that stereotypical, okay, well, I saw this black person on the news for doing this, so that way that means that all black people are like this. Well, this is, and I am. So there's a statistic out there that's saying, oh, well, Asian drivers, you don't want to be behind an Asian driver, blah, blah, blah. Oh, well, Jewish people are blah, blah, blah. N words are blah blah blah, or black people are the N word because you hear them go, oh, I was in a professional setting, but they almost made the N word come out of me. Why? You're in a professional setting. You don't hear a Latino say, hey, you don't, oh, I'm in a professional setting, but you almost made the W word come out of me. That's ridiculous, because all of us need to pay attention to everybody. Everybody needs to really take a look at their Caucasian counterparts, their Asian people, their everything. Everybody takes from every culture. It was a comedian that bust out and said, everybody wants to be an N-word, but nobody wants to be an N-word. That is true. Everybody, like black people, we are the style trenders. We are these things, but the messed up thing about it is when stuff gets real, nope, I want to go back to being my race. See, it don't work like that with us. It is messed up. And that's the same thing with the whole football team that's Redskins. There's a Native American communities, the Native American communities back then, yes, they didn't have a problem with it. Some of them did, some of them did. But now that it is, I can argue both sides of it, but I choose not to because why? The side I want to actually debate about is the name change. Okay, granted, I know there's a lot to go with that name, a lot of history and all that stuff, but the way I see it is you have to look at it in their perspective. They have been called the Redskins for a long anus time. Now they don't want to. Is it wrong to, is it right for them to say it? Yes. Is it wrong for them to actually demand this? No. Because the way I look at it is, even though the Native American community are the most, I wouldn't say laid back, but they're just a small group. It truly begs the factor of, what if the name was called the Washington Coons? It probably would strike a nerve with black people, or the Washington rice eaters, or the Washington um let's see, the Washington wetbacks, the Washington crackers, the Washington Polacks, the Washington Arabs, the Washington whatevers. I can add whatever slang to it. The Washington sand jockeys, the anything. That is not right. That is unfair. You shouldn't stereotype that. And if this out of my whole episode gets debated on, just this, then you're a bigger street racer than I could ever imagine. That's my time. It was a pleasure like always. Please give love, support, feedback, anything. Everybody that's accessible, talk to me. If you want to make yourself accessible and love this show or starting to like this show, you can send a drop to cautionrealradio7@gmail.com. That again, cautionrealradio7@gmail.com. I'm always looking for feedback, opinions. I will be accessible. You can even hit me up on Twitter. That's Caution Radio on Twitter. That is my time. It's been a pleasure. Next week might have guests, might not, because it is July. So I promise that. But then again, never know. This has been Caution Real Radio. I am the merchandise Eddie Stanley. Y'all have a good one this 4th of July weekend.